Times on Etsy have been very, very crazy and a little bit scary with all of the suspensions going on across the platform. There's also a lot of misunderstanding or just not knowing about what sellers like you and I can actually do to make sure that we never have anything potentially hazardous happen to our account. The last thing that I want or anyone wants is to spend years putting their life's work into an Etsy shop just for it to get taken from us. So that is why in this interview, I have Starla here to discuss firsthand on all the things that she's seeing, and because she has direct contact with Etsy, she can give us clear information on truthfully what we need to do to protect ourselves and really just give us some understanding of what's happening on a high level with all these account suspensions. In this interview, we're going to talk about how she personally, her and her team took on over 300 Etsy suspension cases and investigated them one by one to help sellers get their accounts back, and what she saw in that process, as well as, some of the misinformation of the types of mock-ups that have been getting banned with print-on-demand sellers, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and really just overall best practices for you as an Etsy entrepreneur moving forward. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce to you guys Starla. So let's get into today's episode. Welcome everybody to the Till Death Stop Me podcast, because the inevitable is one day we are going to die. Sounds pretty morbid, right? But you want to know what I think is even more depressing? Merely existing on this planet and not achieving, not going, not experiencing, not meeting, not having every single thing that I've ever wanted in this life. We have one shot to do this thing right. So we might as well experience every single thing we've ever wanted, have every single thing that we've ever wanted, build communities with long-lasting, meaningful relationships. Most importantly, achieve our ideal version of what success looks like to us. So that is why in this podcast, we're going to be interviewing people that, even against all the odds, have been able to do that and are working constantly every single day to build their ideal lifestyle. So without further ado, thank you for tuning in, guys. Let's get into this episode. All right, Starla, thank you so much for joining the TDSM podcast today.
I'm so excited. What does TDSM stand for, though? Now I'm the one who's asking silly questions.
Okay, TDSM stands for Till Death Stop Me podcast. And basically, the whole idea of this show was, primarily we're interviewing, e-commerce-based entrepreneurs, Etsy entrepreneurs, because that is, our bread and butter right now. Eventually, I feel like this whole thing could manifest into broadening it out, but I'm trying to stay niched in now, but it's about our journeys, about the biggest things that we've had to overcome as, entrepreneurs on Etsy specifically. And yeah, just what are we going to never stop striving for until death stop us? And I know that's like super extreme, but that was the whole motivation for it. And so yeah, through this journey, I've been just interviewing a bunch of Etsy entrepreneurs and hearing a lot of interesting stories and all the different backgrounds of people. So hopefully we can get into that with you today.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's great. It reminds me of, I've read this book about putting a sticky note on your desk that says you are dying, because yeah, it's cryptic, but it reminds you that you only have so many days to kick butt and do all of the things that you want to do with your life. So, and in listening to podcasts that inspire you is a great way to kind of kickstart that, I think.
100%. So yeah, hopefully, that's what we do here is we inspire people, because for me specifically, it takes that, that inspiration to make me then take action. And so all the things. So you've got it.
Awesome.
Got it. All right. So let's back it up here, because I've been wanting to meet you for a really, really long time, whether you know it or not, because you were one of the first people on YouTube that inspired me to start YouTube, whether you know it or not. And you've just been around for so long on YouTube, on Etsy. And I just know that you are a wealth of information for everybody. And the stuff that you're doing for the community right now is just insane and so giving, all the things that you're doing. I was watching some of the stuff that we'll get into all of that later into the video, but but let's just back it up a little bit. Let's just get into your backstory and how did you get on the Etsy platform, and to where you are now and what you're currently doing now as well.
Yeah, so I started back in 2012. I was only 19 and I had just had my daughter. My husband was in the military, and life on a military base is like, everybody has these cute little identical houses and these cute little families, and everybody's all happy, la 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 la. But, you're in a cage with thousands of other people also in this cage, and there's armed guards, defending your little cage. And then you have to try to figure out, how do I occupy my time while I'm inside this cage? So I can either join all the mommy groups and we can all have play dates together. And that just really wasn't my jam. No offense to them. It's just not my thing. And, I could get a job, but then I'd have to pay for daycare. And it's like, well, if I do that, then I can only work on the base. My options were like fast food chains. All the money that I would make would go straight to putting the daughter through the daycare. So there was no point. So I decided to start an Etsy shop, and it was a lot of random things. I had no idea what I was doing, and Etsy was a very different place at the time. You could just make, a bunch of crap on your table and just list it and not really have any business plan or direction back when I started. So I started making handmade jewelry. I made skeleton key necklaces. And that business within 5 years reached six figures. It started doing very, very well. I started actually building out more of a strategy of structured launches, very, very limited offers. We did a lot of scarcity tactics by making very limited stock of these pieces. And over time, we started getting recognized by major news publications. And the business ended up making more money than my husband was making in the military. So when his term was up, he was only in for 6 years. We decided that, okay, he's not really wanting to re-enlist. He had a lot of medical issues. So we decided to just come home. We were out in California for 6 years. We moved back to Ohio so that my daughter could be around her family, which, she was only 5 at the time, and she had never met her family yet. So we moved home. My husband got a little tech support job, and I decided to just go all in. There was all this pressure, like, oh, I'm the breadwinner now. Crap, what do I do? So I invested a ton of time into building out my funnel for that business. And I ended up getting a lot of people who were asking me, like, how are you doing this? How are you keeping up with it all? How do you do this? How do you build an email list? How do you do that? Can you coach me privately? And I started factoring in my time, and I'm like, there's just no way. I've only got so many hours. I can't run the jewelry business and do this full time, and coach people. So I started out with a YouTube channel, just, giving free tips. But then the questions kept coming in about, oh, can you coach me? Can you coach me? So I took everything that I could possibly teach, in a one-on-one session with someone, plus everything that I learned as a preschool teacher, because I went to school to be a teacher, and all of the things that I learned about human behavioral psychology, it lined up with consumer psychology, because behavioral psychology is consumer psychology, because consumers are, that is human behavior. And I feel like I was able to create something that was truly unique, where most Etsy programs at the time were just focusing on like how to set up a shop, how to take nice pictures, just the basic stuff. And because we took that psychological approach, and I started deep diving into topics like neuroscience, we ended up with a program that was teaching sellers skills that they needed, not just for Etsy, but that could be applied and reapplied to any business model. And I'm a science fiction author. I've used it for, launching my books. I've got someone in my program who started on Etsy. Now she runs a dog deli in Hawaii, which is kind of cool, but she's been able to apply it to her brick and mortar store. And then I ended up working at eRank too. I'm a manager over at eRank, so I've got that kind of insider knowledge when it comes to Etsy's algorithm and the SEO side of things. I'm always like hands-on. I know exactly what, changes are when we get them over at eRank, when things change. I'm able to also make sure that education gets pushed out to my sellers. And then, over time, the handmade business just didn't end up being sustainable with everything that I was doing with eRank. So during COVID, we had a big debacle with Swarovski crystals. You're not allowed to use the name Swarovski anymore. I had a death in my family that it just put a huge strain on my mental health, and I temporarily closed that business, but decided to permanently close it. And now I do POD, which I've been able to offer a pretty cool perspective there because I officially licensed with some of the biggest authors in the world to create their merchandise for them through my Etsy shop. So just, I always want to, like, anytime I start something new, I'm like, how can I use this thing that I want to start to benefit my community? So now I'm able to help a POD audience, which I wouldn't normally be able to cater to without that knowledge. But I'm also able to help those people who want to learn how to license legally so that they can avoid things like IP infringement.
Wow, wow, that is just a lot. That's like just a wealth of knowledge, like so much. Like, and you probably, I don't know, maybe not. You seem a lot more centered than me, but like, I don't know, just like all those things that you just listed, I'm like, dang, I know that's a lot. Like, even though like manager at eRank, running your POD store, plus doing consulting, plus doing like, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
Do you ever get stressed?
I'm always stressed. I am stressed all the time. I tell everybody I have severe anxiety. I
Okay.
highly suspect that I have ADHD. My husband has ADHD, and we tell everybody, buy a physical planner. We have to sit with our planners every week and write everything down because I don't have brain storage space for everything that I have to do. That is my memory card in the form of a book.
Yeah, because I'm the same. I'm like, but then everyone's like, oh, we're just fine. Everything's fine. But we asked for this, but it's still, it's all part of the journey. It's all
It
part of the
is.
journey. So that's super cool. And now I'm really interested to get into this whole, this whole thing, this whole fiasco right now with Etsy and the trademark infringements and not knowing what mockups to upload and all these accounts getting banned and stuff like that. Like, I know, like, if you're looking for information on this topic, like, go to her channel because literally she's getting it directly from the source. So I was listening to one of your videos that you personally are you took on like 300 cases of people getting their Etsy ban. I referred someone to you, and then they put us on an email. I was like, well, I don't know, they're going to. Then I'm like, I'm so sorry that I just sang.
No, you're fine.
So yeah, tell us a little about all that work. And by the way, I'm pretty sure you're doing this for free just to figure out the problem. Like, she literally, trying to figure out why someone's Etsy account got banned is not just like a black and white thing. There is 1,000 variables of, is it on the seller? Is it actually on the Etsy, on the Etsy side, right? So, I mean, this is a considerable amount of time that you're doing and putting into this effort for free for people to really get to the bottom of it. So I'll just stop talking now and you tell us what you're seeing, what's that whole experience been like, and what tips you can give sellers that might be dealing with this or afraid of it happening to them, all the things.
Yeah. So in early April, I was able to climb up the Etsy chain of command, and I was able to make contact with their head of customer support. Unfortunately, I can't share a whole lot of what he said in those communications because there's a big disclaimer at the bottom of the emails that state that I'm not allowed. But I can talk about what I've said because, Etsy doesn't own my words, right? So essentially, I brought to his attention the number of sellers that are in my comments section. I've got a video that I released last year talking about reasons that shops get suspended. And because that video is ranking on Google, anytime someone searches anything about getting their shop suspended, that video is what they see. And then they're in the comments talking about why, oh, I didn't violate any of the things that you talked about. Why was I suspended? So over the course of a year, I'm thinking to myself, this is too many people. I'm very concerned. So I touched bases with him and I brought everything up to him. I sent him the link to the video. I took screenshots of specific comments, tiny little things like someone going in and, changing little bank details or We had a seller who got married and forgot to change their last name. And rather than getting an email like, hey, you forgot to do this, make sure you update this information, bam, suspended. And, they submit their appeal. Oh, appeal within 3 minutes. Our human review process, blah, blah, blah. We have decided that your account does not qualify for reinstatement. Like, no, that is not human review. That was, within 3 minutes of submitting that appeal, which is the average time that sellers were telling me, about 3 minutes after submitting their human review, to be reviewed appeal, they were getting that email back stating that, after careful consideration, like, no, BS, there was no careful consideration there. So I brought it up with him, and he said, okay, well, the best thing I can do is submit an appeal, yada, yada, and let them know to submit an appeal so that we can help them. And I said, that's not working. That's not working. I need to know what to tell these sellers who I know aren't violating any rules. What can I do to help them? Because I'm an empathetic person. And when my comments and my emails are just completely full with these people telling me these sad stories about their whole livelihood being ripped out from under them. I don't know if you're familiar with Vlad from Talk Shop. He runs a huge Etsy shop, like over 100,000 sales. And he was suspended twice, and just that money that he would have made. Even he was only temporarily suspended, but you've got to think about making a living and paying employees and having a studio space, and then just having that income cut. So, basically he said, if you can send me a list of these sellers that, you're working with, we'll double check things. We'll give it another look. So I put out a call to action. No, I was not expecting it to do what it did, but I put out a call to action in my community, and I also work with Printify. So I put a call to action in their community, and I put a call to action in the eRent community that said, hey, if you're experiencing this, drop me an email so that we can look more into it. 300 emails within like 7 days. And like you said, that was all volunteer work, sifting through those emails. We had to do it in phases. I have a virtual assistant, thankfully, so she was able to kind of, go through and look at them and then send through the ones that we knew didn't have copyright infringement. They,
But how did you know? Did you get on calls with these people and ask?
No. So we used the Wayback Machine, which, that's a website that has all, if anywhere within the timeline of a website, it has been indexed within the Wayback Machine, it will pull up what that website looked like at that specific time. So we used the Wayback Machine for some of them. It didn't work for all of them. And then Google also indexes photos for a certain amount of time. So you can search for a shop name in Etsy and then go into the Google image search. And for a lot of them, those images were still indexed, even though the shop itself had been suspended. So for anybody who, we checked Wayback and we checked the Google indexed photos, if we saw like Mickey Mouse t-shirts, we're like, okay, this one doesn't get passed on to our next stage of analysis. Okay. My husband, he was a Air Force intelligence analyst. So he was just able to sift through a lot of these a lot faster than I was. But what we ultimately ended up finding, of all of these sellers who had submitted, their cases, most of them we confirmed were, there was IP infringement, or we were able to source where they were drop shipping from, not POD, but actual, drop shipping. And there were some cases where the drop shipping sites had stolen the photos from the legitimate Etsy sellers, and we were able to narrow that down. But there were a lot of them that they were using the exact photos and cropped out the watermarks from the drop shipping sites. So it's like, okay, how do the drop shipping sites have more photos than you do if they stole your photos from you, So you could just kind of tell. But we ended up sending quite a few cases over to Etsy, the ones that we knew, that we could tell, that we, through our process, were able to, put basically under our umbrella of trust. And we passed those to Etsy, and they ended up reinstating a good majority of the ones that we submitted over. So
Wow, that's so good. So what
yeah,
percentage would you say was like actually getting wrong by Etsy in that 300?
probably like 15%.
Oh no.
Not it
Okay. So follow the rules. The takeaway is follow the damn rules. Okay.
right. So it was not, and I think that something that we've been talking about a lot on my channel is that the loudest voices seem to be the ones from those who I feel they knew that they were doing something wrong. Um, and I don't want to illegitimize the cases that were real
Mm,
because, ultimately the people who know that they're breaking the rules, or even if they don't, that's something that I brought up with Etsy's head of customer support. I'm like, we have got to tell these sellers why they're what is getting their shop suspended. Justification for the permanent termination of a business, that is something that any other marketplace would do for that seller, because then the reasons for the suspensions will become widespread in the Etsy communities rather than just hearsay, where, in any Etsy group, if you see someone post a Mickey Mouse listing, everybody is in the comments saying, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that.
mm,
And finally, we're to a point where I think that, at least within the seller communities, most people know that they can't sell those things. I think some
mm.
choose to do it anyways, but for the
Right.
most part, sellers are aware. And if we could just start having discussions about reasons for suspensions, hey, I got suspended for this, I didn't even know this was a rule, then everybody knows that that is something that you can't do. But one of the concerning things was mockups, and I had a meeting with Printify yesterday about mockups as well, because we're really trying to get down to what's going on the mockup side. And I know that most of your audience is POD as well, right?
I can teach print on demand. I've never done print on demand before,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say when I do consults, I get maybe like 50-50, like
Yeah,
physical goods and print. So it's a good chunk, but it's okay. We should talk about
yeah.
it. Keep going.
That's about what my audience is as well.
Yeah.
So the thing that we're trying to figure out with the mockups is that a lot of the sellers who contacted us, if we knew that they were POD, we immediately asked them, what type of mockups were you using?
Okay.
Because Etsy's policies state that your mockups can either come from your print provider, which those mockups aren't that great, and then everybody's images look identical, or you can take the photos yourself, which is what I do, but it's very expensive because then you have to buy samples. So what we found was that a majority of the POD sellers who had contacted us had either used Creative Fabrica designs 100% without altering them, which you cannot do. You have to have a creative hand in creating your
Okay.
designs. You can go into Canva and combine a lot of elements together to make a unique design, but you can't just buy a design and put it on a shirt. You're not allowed to do that. You have to have a hand in the creation. So we were able to educate those people, at least so they could walk away with some closure. Like,
Right.
hey, maybe you didn't know, but this is probably why you got suspended. That way they at least know, so they can walk away with some dignity. It's not fair that Etsy doesn't tell them. But the other reason that we noticed that, or what we assume is going wrong, is that they were buying their mockups from other Etsy sellers, which is a huge concern to me, because we're encouraging an internal ecosystem of Etsy where buyers can be sellers, and most sellers are also buyers, and they're shopping from each other. And I think that it creates a very healthy environment. And I don't know. I think that there's something that's going wrong within the process of syncing, because I'm assuming that something in the syncing process with your print providers is allowing for the mockups that come directly from those print providers to not get flagged. Whereas when you're purchasing them from other Etsy sellers, and there is an automated system that looks at those photos now. Etsy
Mm-hmm.
confirmed that in the Q1 report. Their head of customer support confirmed it with me that they use an automated system, and I'm thinking that automated system is looking at, we'll say, white woman sitting on a bed with her head tilted smiling. It's not differentiating that one has a
Right.
dog on the shirt, one has a cat on the shirt. It's looking at the props in the background, the woman, her pose, the bed, the plant,
Mm.
off in the foreground. And I think that is where a lot of the issues are coming in, because that system is snagging and catching similarities in those photos and assuming that it is the same item, when in reality it's just the same mock-up. So
They think it's the same seller selling the same item on multiple accounts. That's what they think is happening.
I can only speculate, but I'm going to assume that similarity in mock-ups is doing something to the system, and how it's identifying the print provider mock-ups, in a different way, how it's like, knowing that those are okay, whereas the ones that people are purchasing on Etsy, and again, it's purely speculation, but we can't help but notice patterns. And, I'm not telling anyone that this is the official ruling, but it's something to keep in mind, because it's enough that it's
Yeah.
alarming to me when it comes to someone's livelihood. I would not want to do anything that risks how I'm able to pay my bills.
So yeah, to your point out because that AI, whatever the AI is, it's like if it's the same mock-up, but then you know how POD people kind of do all the same design, and then it's maybe even very similar text, right? So now it's like, oh, flagging, oh, this is the same item on two different accounts. So that's the same, or immediately saying that's the same person, maybe. I don't know, we're assuming here, but yeah, that does make sense, because you're not allowed to sell the same items across multiple accounts. It has to be
Yeah.
a different niche. So that makes sense. Did they say anything about like that they're going to put some sort of system in place? Because right now you're guilty until proven innocent, but you really don't have a chance to prove your innocence. You're kind of just throwing your evidence and begging them to look at it, even though they're not asking for it. Do you think, did they mention anything that they might change the flow of suspensions, where maybe it's like, hey, you're up for suspension, you have X amount of time to submit your proof, or it's like you're innocent until proven guilty? Did they say anything like that?
Well,
I feel like that would be a solution.
Yeah, and that's the real kicker, is that right now it, keep Etsy human, isn't anything, that I would even say is remotely human. Right now, what they say is that a human looks at the appeals, but I don't believe that. And if there is a human that is looking at the appeals, I mean, there's a human name always attached to your appeal email, but I think that they're just clicking down a list. I mean, there's no way that a human is looking at these cases within 3 minutes and determining. Some of these cases that I had to evaluate with my husband when we were going through them, some of them took us over an hour a piece, because
Right.
we were researching them in depth so that we didn't lose that line of communication and that trust with Etsy when I said I will send you valid cases. So we couldn't take any risks there. But from what he has told me and what I'm allowed to say is that they're working on it. I think that they have to know that there's a huge problem. They have to. But with the Q1 investors report, we got a little bit more, because Josh Silverman, the way that he said it is that right now there are more sellers than what there are buyers. And while Etsy profits are up, of course they are, because they're charging a new $15 fee for new shop setups, but their gross merchandise sales are down, which means that the sellers, gross merchandise sales are what I care about, because that's us. That is sellers who are losing money. So what ultimately I think is happening is they have too many sellers and they aren't caring so much about those individual cases. And this is one of the things that I've been telling my sellers as well. If you're suspended, your first step is to submit an appeal. When you submit an appeal, don't beg and plead and submit a big long story. They're not going to read it. They're barely going to look at it to begin with. The longer you draw it out, the more likely it is that they're not going to look at it. And I can tell you from my own experiences, I get like 100 emails a day, to the point where I had to hire my virtual assistant just to help me. I don't read long emails. I don't. I can't. I even have an AI thing that, will summarize an email for me so that, I'm saving time, unless it's my students. If you've paid me, then I'm going to read every single little word and probably take, 2 hours to respond to you. But Etsy, they're dealing with over 9 million sellers. That is up by several million just since last year. I can't remember exactly what the numbers were last year, but several million more. They laid off 250 employees right before the holiday season last year, which means that they're down to 2,000 something, maybe lower. I can't remember offhand after they got rid of that 215. But that's the number of employees that Etsy as a whole has, not just customer support, but everyone who works at Etsy. And then we split that up by department. So we're talking about probably a very small customer service department that has a script that, they have to follow in order to even help. And I just don't think that right now Etsy is built for what we're doing to it, what sellers are doing to it. And
Okay.
I've been I've been everybody's like every other YouTuber's least favorite YouTuber for the last like year and a half, I would say,
No.
because well, there's so many so many YouTubers right now who are like how to list 6,000 items a day,
Mm.
Etsy passive income. And I've been working with John Lincoln, the CEO of Go Imagine, for a couple weeks because I really love their message, for especially for those of you who sell handmade. Like, definitely go check out Go Imagine. The next phase of their growth is going to be getting more buyers on the platform, but it's cheap. Set up a shop there just so you've got a backup. But one of the
Mm.
things that John has been talking about is that handmade isn't passive income, and
Mm.
Etsy, I think that they're starting to realize how much destruction has taken place on the platform since they've made it so darn easy to sell. And, during the pandemic, everybody wanted a side hustle. So I think that really Etsy doesn't need us anymore.
Mm.
And, Josh even said something about, if we lose a seller, there's always one to take their place.
Is Go Imagine like an alternative to Etsy, you're saying?
Yeah, so Go Imagine, they're newer. They currently donate 100% to children's charities. They are
Mm.
US only, and they're only handmade and digital. But they are working on an expansion plan, and it's basically what Etsy used to be, but there's a huge charitable side to it. They have
Mm.
zero plans to go public. Their CEO is amazing. They've got a great app that's like a little like Instagram called Maker Circle that you can go in, and you don't even have to be a Go Imagine user. You can go in and
Mm.
just chat with other creators. He's got a great YouTube channel for Go Imagine. And just listening to him speak, you immediately understand like this person actually cares about handmade business. And I feel very confident recommending them just because I think that it's going to be the next big thing for handmade businesses. And he's
Oh, I
just
like
kind
that.
of, yeah, he's so great, and he's looking at this whole Etsy thing. Go Imagine not being a replacement to Etsy, but something that can work alongside Etsy, since Etsy is no longer even claiming a handmade space anymore. They're saying a place for
Mm.
unique products.
Oh, okay. Wow. 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 I have a couple more questions and then
Sure.
we can segue out of this topic, but this is really helpful. I mean, you're everything I imagined and more, just so knowledgeable. I love this. So much value that you've given us. And okay, so one topic with the Go Imagine one, I mean, I'm sure Etsy has this issue as well, but like, how are they proving that people are handmade sellers? You
Go
know?
Imagine specifically. So they have a bit of
Yeah,
a
like you have to get accepted or something.
yeah, you've got to get accepted by Go Imagine,
I
and I
think that's
love
good.
that. Yeah, they've got like a
Mm.
vetting process. And right now he was talking about how there's only 2,000 sellers on Go Imagine right now. And right now, like the thing is, everybody wants to know, what about the buyers? Well, there aren't a lot of buyers because it's new.
Mm.
And he was really talking about the chicken and the egg situation, where what do you do first? Do you get buyers first or do you get sellers first? Well, without sellers, you can't have buyers. So they've been putting, money into campaigns that try to get more sellers in the marketplace. And one of the incentives that they've been using to do that is they have a $10 plan for a little website. And
Mm.
the benefit is that you're paying $10 for a website, whereas like my Wix site, I pay like $400 a year or something ridiculous. This, you're paying $10 a month, and you get listed in their marketplace. So that's kind of how I've been telling sellers. I'm like, look, if you don't want to pay for an expensive website, you got this really cheap option. You can have your own little website, but then the benefit of that is you also happen to be on the Go Imagine marketplace. And, early adopters of platforms like this, they tend to be the most successful in the long run, which is what he
Mhm.
said for the people who have started on Go Imagine. Is that they're the most successful ones on Go Imagine, is the ones who started selling first. But the other benefit there is that the ratio of competitors to visitors, I mean, 6,000 sellers across, all the industries you'd expect, candles, soaps, jewelry, yada,
Mhm.
yada. And I think that he said, I'm probably getting this wrong. I'm sorry, John, if you're watching this. I think he said that they had like 200,000 visitors the month before last. It would have been, that ratio is way better
Yeah.
than 9 million competitive sellers versus however many customers Etsy has.
Yeah, and
So,
I think you hit it on the nail. I mean, even if, I mean, it's kind of hard for Etsy to backtrack now, but like I feel like another potential solution is like just qualify people, like make it an application, make
yes.
it, tell me your story, tell us what you're doing, where you're, tell us everything, like I think, but in the beginning, obviously it was, open the doors because they just want growth faster, but
They used to. They used to require photos. They used to require proof long, long ago. You could submit photos of your workspace and stuff. I don't know how long they did it, but I know that it was a phase that Etsy had in place. And I think that things like production assistants and stuff kind of knocked that out of the water, which, I get it. I'm POD too, and I always tell people who are anti POD, like, look, you'll never own an original Picasso or an original Thomas Kincaid. POD is how artists and photographers distribute their work so that they can focus on the thing that they're good at, which is, the creation of their products. It was never
mm,
intended for AI. That's not, AI wasn't even a thought when POD, and Etsy became a thing. It was never intended for people to go buy creative Fabrica designs and slap them on t-shirts. It was intended for artists to be able to distribute their work so that they could focus on the thing that they need to be doing, which is making more art.
right. No, that makes sense. No, this has been super, super valuable. And just thank you so much for sharing all of that information
Yeah.
and everything that you've done for the community, that 300 people list. That's just like,
Yeah.
that's really nice of you that you did that, just to get the bottom of it, to be that vehicle for information of
And
value, like real
disclaimer
information.
though, for everybody who's watching this now, as of probably, May, June, whenever it gets published, I'm not taking any more. I'm done doing it because it was my whole week, 3 people all day, every day. And I've had people now messaging me. They're like, "I'll pay you." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't." It's like I feel like it's the boat where people are like, they're on a burning island, like, wait for us. And I'm like, I can't. I've taken as many as I can.
Yeah, I mean, but you gave good insight on what to do, like,
Yeah.
as you're submitting, like what to do, what action to do. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely scary. I mean, I got my account suspended for 9 months before, and we went straight into submitting just like evidence and how we make our molds and like everything, and it took 9 months, but we got it back for sure.
That's
I mean,
awesome though. 9 months is ridiculous. That is insane.
I mean, you get it back, you lose all your positions on everything, but if there's a will, there's a way. That's all I have to say. And when they were happening, I got like 5 or 6 messages too, and yeah, I all I could share is like, this is the email that I sent, I got it back. Whatever evidence you have visually, I don't know what you would say to this now, but I was just submitting evidence, like everything, conversations, invoices from our production partners, conversations, like everything, the whole process. And yeah, it took 9 months, but it got back.
I mean, there's and reaching out on their professional platforms as well. I don't know how it is now, but I that's how I was able to kind of climb the chain as I started with Instagram DMs. I don't know how
Oh,
much
okay.
of that was me like being me and then just knowing. I mean, he already knew who I was.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been making a stink in the Etsy community for like the last year with our Keep Etsy Human movement and everything, which I think that they just recognized my name. Oh, I was gonna say the professional platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn, they don't want people complaining on those publicly where buyers are gonna see it. So if someone has to get a hold of them and the normal means aren't working out, try reaching out on a platform like LinkedIn because they
Mm,
seem to be more responsive.
that and Twitter.
Yes,
Twitter's a
and
good one as
Twitter.
well. They will respond in 5 minutes. They'll respond in 5 minutes, but don't you have to I intentionally write your Twitter posts. Make it like,
Yeah.
say your case.
And be nice, because that poor social media little guy who's taking care of their social media accounts, he's not connected to it. He's not, he's
Yeah.
not the one who suspended your shop. Like, be
Yeah.
nice.
All right, all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. Let's segue into a little bit of a different
Sure.
topic, but I'm just curious, what is some of the biggest things, as you being as a diverse entrepreneur that you are, what are some of the biggest things that you've had to overcome in your personal journey?
Oh, man. Where do I start? um, I dare say that the biggest one, okay, I'll give you two. The first was scalability for my first business, creating the jewelry. The reason that I stopped, and this is actually the first time I've talked so candidly about it. My grandmother passed away, and she had nothing to her name. And it was right before, my holiday prep for the season. And I had to pay for the funeral, plan everything. Like, I had to do it all. But I was running a handmade business at the same time. And we had our big holiday launch, which always sells out. But I had to make less stock than I normally could because I was just too busy with all the planning. And what really solidified my decision to stop that business, and what I didn't really tell people at the time, was because of the limited stock, people were upset that they missed out on things. And it wasn't anything that they had bought. It's not like I said, oh, I don't have this anymore, even though you paid for it. Here's a refund. No, it was people who are upset about things that they wanted to buy that they didn't even have the opportunity to because it sold out too fast. And, it was dehumanizing. And I kind of realized that myself as a person had drifted away from my original ideal target customer that I developed when I was 19. And I was 29, when this all went down. So it had been a long time that I had been doing this, but my values had changed. And it left me with a lot of trauma where I felt like I was more of like a jewelry making robot rather than a person. And I'd hired help, but my dad was helping me, but nobody could create what I was creating. And I'm still to this day the only person who has created, something. There are similar competitors out there, but I'm the only person who has created exactly what I made. So, that was really hard. Pivoting was hard, but and adapting into something new was hard. Jumping into POD was difficult. But we decided to find our purple cow, our unique element, which was licensing with those authors. I'm a science fiction author, and I'm a big reader. I love the book talk and bookstagram community. So through, taking something that I was newly passionate about and turning that into a business where I get to, read a book that I've been excited about a launch for, like A Court of Thorns and Roses or something, and then be able to create a bunch of designs and send those over to my authors team and them say, wow, this is so cool. Yes, license approved. Great. It's so much more fulfilling, and it's taken a lot, out of that. So, the scalability, I guess, is something that a lot of people don't plan for because I think we don't plan to succeed. And then when we do, it's like, oh crap, now what do we do? So now I teach people, like, plan for what you'll do if your business becomes an overnight sensation. It probably won't, because that's just not how businesses work, especially now. But plan for it, because you never know. You could have one item that completely changes how you run your business. So that's definitely part of it. And then the other part is just, I dare say, dealing with online criticism, which that doesn't matter if you're a business owner, if you're a YouTuber, if you're a TikToker, wherever you are, whatever space you're in. I think that the fact that I have a paid program turns a lot of people off, because I'm sure you've seen all the cool, like, Lamborghini bros. Oh, you gotta buy my, like, the Ty Lopez's and stuff. And I think that the course industry right now, it was another hustle that people jumped onto during the pandemic. And I get all these ads for, like, AI course creator. You don't even have to know the material. This AI will write it for you. All you got to do is read the script. And I'm just like, it's so hard, because I think that it's created a lot of cynicism towards education. And as somebody who went to school to be an educator, I'm saddened that this industry has turned into what it is simply because I think that it encourages a state of surface level education. And I created a video on this a couple weeks ago where basically people are so addicted to the short form video content that what they look for is, 5 minutes tips, 10 tips to become an overnight success. Oh, I'm going to watch all these TikToks about being successful. And that surface level education is like eating candy. It's really, really tasty and, it's fun and it's entertaining. And you're like, wow, I never knew that. But until you delve into what I consider more of like the bedrock of education, and you really start, spending more time and digging into the topics that are hard, that are complicated, that don't take a night to master. You got to spend, several weeks, things like Etsy SEO. I think that right now my biggest challenge is expressing to people that my way isn't the only way. I'm a coach, but I'm also a teacher. I'm a public speaker. I travel. I speak at schools. I've spoken at my local college. And whether I'm here in front of a camera or I'm standing on a stage or I'm standing in front of high school seniors, education is important no matter where you seek it. And if you're not a course person, that's fine. Be a book person, be a podcast person, which even podcasts are so because I think that podcasts where you get one person who is sticking with you for all of the podcast is a little different than guest style podcasts because our time is limited. We can't deep dive too much. But just digesting meaningful content, whether it be, taking a college course or taking a MOOC, which is basically free college courses that you can take. Taking courses online, I think, is great. Just make sure that you're checking things like refund policies and stuff, just because there are a lot of people that are scammy in this industry, and being very, very careful and making sure that you know the person that you're giving your money to as well. Spend time with their free content and, make sure you agree with the things that they teach. And just seeking higher knowledge is so important. And I feel like the more that I say it, the more people think, oh, you have to say that because you're selling a course. And I'm like, look, I don't care where you're learning from because I'm a good teacher. I went to school to be a good teacher. My priority is to be a good teacher. And if you want to stick with all my free content and there's somebody else's like paid program that you like more, please do that. But don't stop learning, because I think that that's one of the number one things that's wrong with the Etsy community right now is everybody wants the money, instant success. I'm like, that didn't work in the 90s when they were selling it on real estate DVD sets on how to make a bunch of money overnight. And now it's just repackaged in a different way. We got to be careful about the things that we're learning and how we're learning so that we're actually retaining the good stuff.
Well, I don't think you fall short on anything when you're making your videos. I'm not just saying that. You really do get into the nitty-gritty. You're really like authentically giving useful information. I've never seen personally anything from you like get with the vibe of get rich quick, because I'm sure I'm the same way. I actually do the opposite, and it's probably a test to my channel not being as bigger or whatever. But yeah, I don't think that you have to worry about that at all. I think you're doing a great job, and that, and it always gets me with the core stuff, because it's like, that same person that's giving you ridicule or whatever, you just went to a college for 4 years and spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars, why not just get it straight from the source or someone that's done the thing? So yeah, I very much can get in my own head. I get imposter syndrome a lot. And it's definitely a real thing. And
people are mean.
But people are freaking mean. But I have to say your information and your even free or paid information that you have is, you're doing way more good. You're bringing way more good for sure with all the people you help. But I know it's like you can get 100 good jobs. Thank you so much. You changed my life. And then it's the one negative remark that's just like, okay, I'm gonna quit everything. I'm quitting tomorrow.
Right. My students, I've got 1,200 students now. And, if I'm having a bad day, I'll just like hop on my phone with my makeup like not done and my hair a mess, and I'll hop into my Facebook group and I'll just be like, guys, like I'm having a bad day, and And it's my students nurture me. Like we've got this cool mutual thing where
Okay.
they'll make me feel better, which, maybe that makes me egotistical, but sometimes I need it. They're friends.
I was thinking, so this is so cringe of me to say this out loud, but I'm gonna just say it out loud. Okay, because I was having a really hard few weeks. Like it's just like I'm going through this like growing phase or whatever, and I'm just having meltdowns like every other week. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in my car freaking out right now in the gym parking lot. Let me just film myself crying, because you know what? On the off chance that I get through this, maybe I'm gonna post this video one. So I'm literally like one of those people right now filming. I have like so many videos of me crying, but it's like actually me like not good. But I was like thinking about maybe I can turn this somehow into a positive motivational thing one day. But I don't know, all the things. We're just human. It's a part of it, and I think you're super authentic, and people appreciate that. And like I said, you're doing all the right things. We're trying.
I was gonna say you too. You are super duper down to earth. You don't come off as. I mean, I read a script like I'm all over the place. I won't be able to get my points concise, but you have just this really great natural flow to you.
Thank you. There's so much editing, but thank you.
Mine too. No worries.
Thank you. But this has been super cool. All right. So for the final question, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time. What are you never going to stop striving for until death stops you?
Oh man, my slogan for my program and the motto I live my life by: plan, adapt, evolve. Teaching that to the world, whether it be high school grads, whether it be sellers, no matter what, plan for change, because change is always going to happen. Adapt to change quickly, because you are going to get left behind if you don't adapt. And over time, you'll evolve. You will change. Remember when Facebook updated like last year or year before last, and everybody was freaking out because the navigation was different? Now it's just second nature to us. That's evolution, and we all evolve over time. So teaching that across, whether it be business or high schoolers or, wherever, I think that is an important message that I want to spread to the world.
I love that. Thank you so much, Starla. I hope to have you on
Yes.
again soon. And make sure you can link below her Instagram. Actually, she has really great, funny Instagram content. I love it. I'm trying to get on the Instagram, but I'll link the Instagram, her YouTube channel, so you guys can check her out. And yeah, till next time. Thank you, Starla.
Thanks. Bye-bye.